consider buying your processed oboe and bassoon cane from those friendly folks over at Barton Cane. Processed with care and precision for your everyday reed-making needs. Take the pain and injury out of reed-making by letting Barton Cane do the hard, repetitive, boring stuff. Free up time for practicing, happy hours, hikes, baking, and spending time with friends and family. Barton Cane, here for you. Visit www.bartoncane.com.
Ugly Duckling Oboes is dedicated to the development of young oboe players. They provide quality handmade oboe reeds, private lessons, and high-quality oboe sales, rentals, and consignments. The oboes that they rent are conservatory mechanism oboes that include the left-hand F key and low B flat key. All are maintained by oboe-specific technicians. In-person lessons are available, as well as virtual lessons for students who live outside the geographic area or have transportation and scheduling challenges. They also offer online college audition coaching for high school juniors and seniors who plan to audition to be music majors. Visit uglyducklingoboes.com for more details on how you can set up yourself for success and sign up for their newsletter. That's uglyducklingoboes.com.
Hi, I'm Galit Kaunitz.
And I'm Jackie Wilson, and you're listening to Double Reed Dish,
A podcast for oboists,
bassoonists,
and the people who love them.
Have we ever recorded in the same time zone when we're not physically together?
Yes, but that was when you lived in Missouri.
Oh, that's right. But not since
that
my
was
move.
a long time ago. Not since your move. No.
Wow. I'm probably the only one who finds that fascinating, but
Well, we are in the same time zone because I am currently desiccating in Tucson.
I don't know if I know that word or if I always think you're meaning defecating, but you've said it multiple times to me since being in Arizona. Does it mean melting? I guess I'm not familiar.
No, it means that your body has become a dried out husk. You know, like when they find mummies in
Desiccate,
Egypt.
to remove the moisture from something to cause it to
Yeah.
become dry. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a new word to me, but it definitely sounds like defecation. And I knew you weren't saying defecate. I knew that, but I was just like, this is an interesting choice of sounding word. Okay, so you're dried up.
You're like, this doesn't mean what you think it means.
I knew I didn't know what it meant, but I was like, I need to follow up. It was definitely like a follow-up item to put on the to Google list.
That makes me laugh so much.
So raisins are desiccated grapes.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. There's your double reed dish word of the day.
In what other context can we use this word?
Try to use it today in your day.
You're welcome, everyone. You're welcome. No, but seriously, it's between 105 and 107 degrees here all the time. And I'm like, don't come at me with it's a dry heat. I don't want to hear it.
I love dry heat.
It feels terrible.
You'll get acclimated to it and you'll never want to go back. I never got used to humidity and it honestly feels like torture to me.
I feel like I'm being broiled.
Do you know what my favorite thing is to do? Because I love dry heat, but also I'm a bit of a lizard. Like I run cold. I love heat. And so what I'll do sometimes in the summer, people think I'm so crazy for this.
You're so crazy for this. I know what you're going to say, and you are so crazy for this.
I'll get into the car and I won't turn the AC on right away. And it just feels like a tanning bed. I mean, I've never been in a tanning bed before, but it feels like what I imagine one feels like. And it's just like, And Chris is like, you're gonna
No.
faint sometime. Like, it's really actually irresponsible of you to like get in a hot car, not turn the AC on and go driving around. But it just feels so nice. Like I love like getting in a car and feeling the heat. You will come to love dry
No,
heat. I promise
no,
you.
I won't. The idea of sitting in a hot car and not immediately blasting the air conditioning makes me want to already be dead.
Don't get in my car or you'll get desiccated for sure. Well, how was the move?
The move was epic. It was an epic. It was like Homer's Odyssey.
Galit's move.
Nobody's ever accused me of being overly dramatic before. No, it was really crazy. We filled up a Penske, a 26-foot Penske, with all of our stuff, all of our possessions, and we hooked up a trailer for my car and attached it to the back of the 26-foot truck. And Becky drove that for 3 days.
Mm.
And then I followed behind her in her car with two dogs, and she had one dog in the cab of the truck. And we did that for 3 days. I mean, I counted up all the hours of driving, and it was 39 hours of straight driving.
I'm not jealous. I'll say that.
Listen, the middle day was the longest day, and I think we drove 19 hours that day. And of course, at the end of the day, there was a huge accident, and we were stopped on the highway for 2.5 hours, just not moving.
So brutal.
We were 1 hour from our destination. We were sitting there for 2.5 hours. It was wild, but we did it. We did it. We made it to Tucson. We unloaded all of our stuff. We returned the truck. The first leg of this epic move is complete.
That's the hard part is you finally arrive and you're so ready to take a load off, but you have to, it's just like arriving in your destination is the first part.
Yeah. And then the truck. So once we unloaded it, we had to like park it in a different part of the neighborhood. We're staying in Becky's parents' house. And they live in a very nice, quiet neighborhood. And there was some alarm going off in the truck. Like the door sensor thought the door was open when it wasn't. And it wasn't just an in the cab alarm. It was honking the horn. This rhythmic, loud horn honk at 9 p.m. We were
sorry. We're your new neighbors.
Everyone was looking at us like, that is so rude. And we're like, we agree. It is very rude. We cannot do anything about it. But yeah, we made it. We're safe. We're healthy. Everything's good. That's the important part. So you had something very exciting happen. Let's not dwell on my trials and tribulations. Tell us about your concerto premiere.
It was awesome. It went really well. It was a very positive experience. So yeah, I premiered the Connor Chi Concerto for Bassoon and Strings with the Ravenna String Orchestra, which is a community orchestra in Seattle. And they were just the whole time, they've been a dream to collaborate with. At the last rehearsal, it just kind of came up naturally, but the conductor was like reminding the orchestra, like, okay, we wear black on black, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, of course, Jackie, a soloist, you can wear whatever you want. It was just kind of a joke like thing, And then I was like, oh, well, actually, I'll be wearing I'll be wearing red and black in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is a, huge issue nationwide, but especially in Washington State and especially in Seattle and King County, which is among the highest instances and one of the most dangerous places for Indigenous and Native American women to be in our country. And so it's very relevant to this community. and it being a community group and whatnot. I didn't even plan to say it. It just kind of came up, and I was like, so I'm wearing red and black to honor them. And then I'll just on an impulse, I was like, so if anyone wants to wear a splash of red and join me, you're welcome to, which I guess really wasn't in my purview to say, or it's but
you're in your boss lady era.
It's a community group, like it's a volunteer group. Like this is not me like undermining union rules or anything like that. But it was so cool. Subsequently, the conductor wrote me and was like, would you like to put a dedication in the program that reflects what you said? And so they let me formally dedicate the premiere to the missing and murdered Indigenous women in our communities, and list a website resource to draw audience members too if they wanted to get involved. And then I showed up, and I didn't see an orchestra member who didn't have a splash of red. Like some of them even just like tied a red ribbon in their hair, or all the men had like red bow ties or pocket squares. It was just really cool. And I feel really happy with how I played. I remembered the whole thing, which is good.
Great.
And Francine Peterson
already you've exceeded expectations.
And Francine Peterson showed up to hear me play.
I saw that. That was so sweet.
It was awesome. It was super cool. So did Anna Marsh. And so it was just awesome. It had a great turnout. People really liked it. How can you not like Connor's work? And I just couldn't have asked for a better premiere experience in terms of it was just very relational. It was very communal. And I was thinking as I was like listening to the first half, I was like, it's cool because I'm touring this several places, but the premiere was in Washington State, and then the last stop on the tour is going to be with the Port Angeles Symphony, which is just on the other side of Puget Sound. And so it's going to start in Washington and end in Washington, which is my home community. And so I was just like, what a great way to kick all this off.
Oh, I love it. I wish I could have seen it live.
Hey oboists, have you ever found it difficult to sort out when and how to find a new oboe or English horn? Oboe Chicago streamlines the process, providing personal and professional consultation and a large selection of lovely instruments. The process feels comfortable and thorough. Selection includes Effleray of Paris, Howarth of London, Covey oboes, and Fox products. For a current listing of Oboe Chicago's selection, please visit www.oboechicago.com. For a credit of $100 towards shipping, mention Double Reed Dish when you call or email Shauna. That's oboechicago.com.
Chemical City Double Reeds is a full-service double reed shop specializing in the sale of instruments, cane, accessories, and sheet music. Double Reed Dish listeners can enjoy free shipping with code DRDISH. Visit them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or online at www.chemicalcityreeds.com.
Yes,
we are so excited to welcome to Double Reed Dish Rebecca Scarnati, professor of oboe at Northern Arizona University. Welcome to Double Reed Dish.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can we have you introduce yourself to our listeners by telling them how you started to play the oboe? When did you begin on this instrument?
Oh, well, I don't want to say how many years ago that was. I'll just say how old I was. Okay. So my father was a bassoonist. And so I was 9 years old, and we went to that assembly where they showed all the instruments. And I thought, oh, oboe would be good. My dad can make me reeds, because he also did some oboe teaching and made oboe reeds. So I took up the oboe, and I was also playing piano and violin. So, I had a lot of music background before I all started. So then when I went to school, I went to IU, to Indiana University, and I was there for quite a while because I did my undergraduate and my master's and most of my doctorate there. And then I taught at Ohio University for a few years. I was very young, 23 years old when I started that job. Wow. Maybe a little too young. I just finished my master's, So I did that for a few years, and then I got this, what I thought was a really cool job at what is now known as Binghamton University. Then it was SUNY Binghamton. And so they hired me at the university. And in addition to that, I also played there were 3 orchestras in town, the Binghamton Symphony and the Opera Orchestra and a Pops Orchestra. And they all paid the university, and the university paid me. And it was kind of a cool job that way. And then I played with Conspirato Wooden Quintet for 3 years. And then I came to NAU. So that's my basic background. And while I was in Ohio and all those places that were in the East near Cleveland, I was making my drive to Cleveland to study with Mr. Mack on a monthly basis for about 8 or 9 years. So, I never went to the Institute, but I feel like I got a 4-year degree with him with all the lessons I did with him. So anyway, that's pretty much my background.
Well, I'm so curious. He was obviously one of the biggest pedagogical influences in the United States in the oboe world. And I'm just so curious what lessons you learned from him and what you carry on of his teaching.
Well, of course, he was a wonderful reed maker, and he always worked on my reeds when I walked in the door, and we always went over what I needed to change and do. The thing that amazed me was when I would go to his camps, and he would work with people who were just a little better than rank beginners to extremely advanced, and he knew how to handle each and every one of them. And I thought that was really amazing, that he could deal with all of those folks. When I came in, he always had positive words to say. He always gave me wonderful musical ideas, and I always played better when I walked out the door than when I came in. Mm-hmm. And I try hard to maintain that. I'm not sure I always do, but you do what you can. So yeah, those are some of the big things that I think he gave me. I also studied with Jerry Saruchek when I was at IU, so he also had influence over my playing. But certainly, the last years, Mr. Mack was the one who influenced me a lot.
I love that.
Did you always aspire to enter higher education, or what made you decide to pursue that path?
I think it was inbred. My parents were both university music professors at what is now Mansfield University. My mom was an early childhood music specialist. She played piano, and she still does. In fact, she just turned 90. She's 92 and a half at this point. My father was teaching bassoon. He was teaching bassoon and oboe there at that time. So that was kind of an influence on me. And of course, I love to play. But when I was playing in orchestras all the time, I really decided after a while that what I really loved was being able to teach, being able to play chamber music and do recitals. When you're an orchestral musician, you have to do what the conductor says all the time, right? At least most of the time. And when you're a university professor, you can choose what you want to do when it comes to the performing angle. So I think in many ways it allows you to be a little more creative and adventurous in what you take on. So that's what I really have loved. And I love working with the students. That's always been a passion. So
you joined the faculty at Northern Arizona University, I believe 1991 is
That's
what
right.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In that time, how have you seen the profession change?
It's certainly become more one world. There's more connection between all the parts, West Coast to East Coast, Europe to the United States. I took one summer, I did the Music Academy of the West. And it was interesting to work with Bill Criss, and he had very different ideas that were a little, they were different from what I was hearing from the East Coast, and perhaps a little more conservative, because there was no connection. And now there is, and I think that has kind of become more worldly. I also see more women in the profession. That was not there before, and I think it had started to happen as I entered. So I don't take any credit for women's being in the profession, but I think others helped to make it possible for me to be able to join the profession that way.
Yeah, I was thinking that 1991 was, pretty early for women to start really getting hired in higher education. So hats off to you for getting yourself inside such a closed off field.
Yeah, well, when I started at Ohio University in 1981, all my colleagues were male.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not only the youngest one, I was also the only female, which had its interesting side to things. I found myself having to balance the four gentlemen would argue amongst themselves, and I'd have to kind of sit and be quiet while they argued. And not only because I was the only woman in the room, but because I was also, I didn't know what to say because I was so young. So I think more youth than it was sex at that point, but certainly that was, yeah. And the person I had replaced had been male. So, that was something that was beginning to change. In 1981, they were seeing it. So, and in 1991, when I came to NAU, they were actually working to try to get more female representatives into there was actually priority on that they wanted to hire more women. I served on a couple of committees. I served on a theater committee my second year here, a hiring committee, because they didn't have any women who could in their faculty. So I was their woman. Unfortunately, they hired another man. Now that department is probably, more women than men at this point. And the woman who is in charge of it there's a woman who's in charge of it who is obviously female, as I'm saying that. Yes. So
your perspective on this is so valuable, having seen it change from the early 80s through today. How does it affect how you advise your students going into the field of music and higher education?
I don't think about it quite as much, the male female thing. I think some of that is starting to go away as far as there not being equal numbers at this point. It is becoming more equal. I don't know that I also, when I came in, I know that I came at the same a percussionist was hired, and we came in at the same pay level. So it's not like he came in with less than what I had. And so I think that is kind of diminishing a little bit. If you want to go into higher education, I tell my students, you need to diversify. You can't just play the oboe. You got to have another trick if you want to get into higher education. You may be lucky enough to be and fabulous enough that you can walk in and take a job where you just can teach oboe, but more times than not, that isn't the case. So you got to have something else in there, whether it's music theory or history or, some kind of other area. It really helps to break into the barrier there. I did a lot of chamber music coaching too. So, that also lines up with what we do.
Kind of expanding on that a bit, I imagine you referenced search committees, and I feel like I never learned more about the hiring process and what I needed to do as an applicant than I did serving on my first search committee. And so we have listeners, who are hoping to embark on a higher ed path or who are in the process of seeking higher ed jobs. So can you maybe expand on, as a search committee member, the things that you've learned or what make materials really stand out, like general advice for those who want to advance and be successful in higher ed searches?
Okay. Oh, there's so much. One year I served on 5 search committees. So, there's so much. What they probably need to understand is here at this university in the state of Arizona, we are required to come up with a matrix that we have to work from. So, we give more points to people who have some experience. So if you're coming from even a community college, you have some community college experience, any kind of college teaching experience ups where you can go, ups your numbers and makes you higher up on the list. Of course, the quality of the performance that you send and the ability to get to it. Sometimes I can't tell you how many times I've been on search committees where the links are broken and you can't hear things. And in one situation, I can remember the person said, well, I can't fix that. I have to get somebody to fix it for me. And it took 3 weeks for them to fix it.
Wow.
And that doesn't impress. In this day and age, I also think it's important to know how to work more of the technology that's out there. I admittedly do not know nearly as much as I should, though I got a little better at it during COVID because I had to record classes. I teach some. I have always taught advanced ear training here, and I had to record classes so that because you couldn't do it live on Zoom because there was delay. You played a rhythmic dictation. That was the worst, right? You play a rhythmic dictation and it comes out with, don't even talk about eighth notes versus triplets because you can't hear the difference because it'll speed up and slow down. So anyway, when you're looking at those things, you make sure you've got all all of your technology set up so everybody can see it. Be organized in your Vita or whatever you refer to it as, so that everybody can see this is who I've studied with. These are my degrees, of course, and I'm sure most places have some kind of class or somebody who helps people write those first Vitas out. Then you need to just try to get as much experience as you can performing, looking for an angle that makes you come out a little more. So, having extra things you can do, something that you're doing with reads or whatever, anything you can think of. I'm not being very imaginative with this at this point, but I'm sure the listeners are, so they can come up with things. But really, one of the things that I think really helps is experience. So any way you can get experience, even if it's, you only have 2 students at a community college, you can put down that you taught at this community college. That helps. You don't be afraid to take on things that you might consider after you've been to a big school. You might consider that to be a little more beneath you somehow. Don't feel that way. You always need to be looking at ways to get that teaching experience, and so that you can list that in the Vita. That really helps numbers always, and we're required to go by those numbers. We have no choice. When you see something about diversity on in your ad that you get, there's always a diversity question in our ad, talking about working with diverse student populations. Address it. Don't ignore it. There are points on that matrix just for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even for everybody, that is the case. Not just people who are not diverse, I should say. They need to find a way to talk about working with diverse communities, in every way. In Flagstaff, we're constantly working with people from the Navajo Nation. It's only like 10 miles outside of town, and the Hopi Reservation is inside the Navajo Reservation, just a few more miles into the Navajo Reservation than that. So in addition to the Hispanic community in this town, we also have a great many Navajo and Native Americans on campus. That's very important. So, you have to address those issues when you apply for a job. Look at your ad and make sure you address everything that's in the ad. That's another really good piece of advice, I think.
I really like that perspective, and it highlights that you can't separate your artistry from community engagement and diversity, and how, even when you're applying for a job, you have to connect all of the dots and form a full picture of what we're looking for in higher education, from a potential teacher, is that you can't just be a fabulous oboist. You have to also be an artist who is aware and engaged in other ways.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
In this community, that's very important. Maybe in others, not so much, but here
Mm-hmm.
in Arizona, it is very much at issue. And a lot of the Southwest, I think, is that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you gave us really good job seeking advice. How do you advise young professionals who are in their jobs, who are potentially navigating higher ed political situations for the first time and issues of collegiality? What is your advice for those kinds of situations, having been in the job?
The first thing I think I would advise them to do is to really listen to what's being said so that they understand what the issues are really well. A lot of times I've seen younger faculty jump into things when they don't quite understand the issues at hand. And that's probably the biggest piece of it. Listen to the people around you before you speak, and make sure you understand the situation well. Being in the middle of something, I haven't run into that here. The most part at this university, when there's a disagreement, we agree to disagree and we work through it. At other places, that is not always the case, and I have been in a situation like that. And I found that I had to let them duke it out and not insert myself into the situation. That really, because it was so much history. And I think it really, really depends, on the situation. When it's personal, they have to take care of it. When it affects the university and the teaching, that's when nudging needs to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Without forcing your philosophies on everybody else, because that's not going to be what works. Everybody's personality is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty careful about giving advice, because everybody has to develop their own teaching style and has to develop ways to teach, and it'll be different for each person. So, they can look and watch you and get ideas, but ultimately your personality dictates how you're going to be teaching. So
I want to shift gears a little bit. It's a double read podcast. We always ask about reads. But with your particular situation, I have a feeling we're going to have some follow-up. But let's start with, as a full-time professional oboist, can you tell us a little bit about your habits and your setup? We love hearing about the geeky stuff, the shape, the gouge, all of your approach to the world of reeds.
Okay, so because I'm so busy during the year, one of the things I love about this job is I've been able to play with the Flagstaff Symphony all these years, and I've been able to play with a wooded quintet here at the university, and just lots and lots of playing. And it's so busy that I have to do some of my read things in the summer when I have time. And I know there are folks out there who say, well, no, you got to gouge it and use it and shape it within so many days. But the reality of my life is I can't do that. So I have usually, now I gouged way ahead last summer, so I don't have to gouge till after the conference is over. But I do most of my reed gouging usually from when school gets out in May until the middle of June. And I usually have to gouge about 800 pieces of cane to get through the year. What I have noticed is that the quality of the cane, probably because of global warming, has disintegrated a lot over the last 10 years, I would say.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
pretty
find
awful
myself
right now.
I find myself having, I hate to throw away cane. It's terrible. So I wrap it and then it's a disaster read. And then I've wasted that time. But at the same time, sometimes when you look at it, it turns out to be a good read. I made a read recently that had a big brown spot all the way across it. And sometimes those are great and sometimes they're horrible. It was a really good one. So I was glad I didn't throw that one out. So yeah, I do most of my gouging in the summertime. I actually, because Flagstaff is the desert at 7,000 feet, it's a little different than some of the other high altitude places in the United States because it is so dry. Now, the good news is for those coming to the conference is you're coming during monsoon season. Now, that sounds ridiculous. I know in the desert, what that used to mean was that at 1 o'clock every afternoon, it rained for about a half an hour. But now with global warming, that has changed and is not as regular. But it still happens. And the nice thing about that is that there's a little more humidity in the air than there is in the month of June, when we tend to get no precipitation at all. So because this dryness is always such a factor, I always have multiple different types of cane going because I'm never sure what's going to work. Sometimes the soft stuff actually works best when it's really, really dry. And the harder stuff works better when it's wetter. So, I've got it there and I'm, constantly making reads on several different kinds of cane. I always mark it. I always know what I'm scraping on. I write it. I write what it is on the threads, I can kind of predict this isn't going to work. Let me try something else. I'll do more of this kind of cane, less of that. But I do try to keep all of it going. Then if I'm missing the change, I'll catch myself. So I've used, I used the Mac Plus for many years. For obvious reasons. I'm using the Brannon X at the moment, which was my first shape. And then that shape was kind of weird looking because it was made from a mold. And of course, then Brannon destroyed all his molds. And somebody took the Brannon shape and made a shape of it that was not erratic, and it was perfectly shaped. And I'm been having some pretty good luck with that one lately. That's what I've been using. But, I could easily go back to the Mac Plus for that matter. Tubes, you have trouble at 7,000 feet with getting things to vibrate sometimes. So I do kind of like to use those tubes without the cork on them. Mm-hmm. If I don't want to mention names of whose they are, which I'd be happy to do too. But some of my students play on a kind of oboe that where the well goes down and those tubes don't fit in them. So I wrap on cork and those. The reeds I always like the best are always the ones because of the lack of vibration up here are usually the metal tubes rather than the cork tubes. I think that's what it is.
It's a good tip.
Yeah. I make a lot of reads.
Well, you mentioned it. You invoked the number that is on everyone's mind right now, 7,000 feet.
Yep.
And yes, you referenced you will be hosting the 2024 International Double Reed Society Conference. So for those of us who are excitedly planning to attend, we are also mindfully thinking of reads and what our reads will and will not do at 7,000 feet. So I wonder if you have any general tips for making reads at elevation, and also those of us who are going to have to prep cane and make reads at home and then bring things to Flagstaff. I would guess that you have a certain amount of this with like even students auditioning for NAU or different things like that. So do you save us, Becky? Put your magic wand for elevation reads. We need it.
Okay. So when I go back east, and my parents still have a house at Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York. It's very humid in the summer. And sometimes the reeds are just a little too open and not they have that opening that makes them just a little too hard to blow on. I mail those back here and they're perfect.
Mm.
And if I have a bunch of those, sometimes I don't have to make a reed for, a week or two. It's a blessing. So if you have some reeds that are a little bit more open than you like, and they're having to use, they're just not comfortable to play on because that's what you want to use here. Now, one thing is that it takes about 48 hours for two things to happen. One is for the reeds to settle down. It takes 48 hours for the reeds to kind of settle down to this altitude. It also takes your body 48 hours. It takes 48 hours for your hemoglobin to adjust to the oxygen levels. So those are kind of a couple of things to take note of. So if you have the opportunity to come a little before you play, at least a day or two before can be very helpful.
No, what you should do is sell your reeds
That's
for
right. That's better.
Oh, they were
$50 a reed.
Yeah, no, $700. People
right. Right. Everybody will go buy the new plastic reeds, right? Instead. So because they'll be cheaper. I want to try those at some point because Lord knows not having to make reeds every single day of my life would be a great blessing.
Oh, seriously. Okay, so this is a perfect segue. Let's talk about IDRS 2024 in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Okay, so we have about 120 recitals on the 5 days. 2 or 3 recitals every 45 minutes. So we have 25 minutes of recital, and then there's 20 minutes for people to get out the door and the new people to get back in the door. And hopefully that will give people time to go from place to place. I have a little bit of time for lunch each day because that was a concern some people had. And we also have about 60 or 70 lectures. I haven't counted them up recently. Divided between oboe, bassoon. There are some workshops. And there are 6 each master classes. Let's see what else. We have the galas, of course, 2 with orchestra and 2 are chamber music. And then on the middle, we have a party up at Ashurst Hall, which is just a block and a half away. It's used to be our recital hall, but we gave it away in favor of the new recital hall they built in 2019. So that's open to everybody and free of charge, except we are going to have a cash bar. Otherwise, everything else will be free for that party. It'll be from 6 to 8 that night. I can't think of anything else that I'm leaving out, but they're really interesting pieces, a lot of world premieres, and at the same time, a lot of interesting pieces from all periods of music. It's not just all the latest stuff that people have written. And there also are some pieces that I don't know. I'm looking forward to hear. I don't know the Pla double oboe concerto. That's a Baroque piece. That'll be very interesting to hear.
Cool.
So I think there's some really interesting pieces on all the programs and the lectures. There are a number of lectures concerning reeds. I know there's one on profilers for the bassoonists. There's one on gouging machines for the oboes. There are health lectures on how to be healthy in playing our instruments. And I mean, all sorts of topics. We should be able to put all of that up. I'm hoping to put some of it up today so that people can see it. We can't put the whole booklet up. That's not going to be ready for a while, but we can put everything that's happening each day up. We just finished day 3, so we have 2 more to go, but I can get those up so people can start looking at the different topics that are up there.
Well, I need to ask my most burning question is what are the restaurant recommendations?
Well, there are a ton, we are a tourist town and a university town. So we have a lot of restaurants in this town. We have all the typical, junky restaurants that I shouldn't call them junky restaurants, the fast foodie, more fast foodie type restaurants. But we have per mile a more Thai restaurants than you can possibly imagine, and they're all good. We have a lot of sushi restaurants. We have a vegan Thai restaurant, by the way. And everybody's very aware of diet. So, if you have needs, tell people and they'll make it work anywhere you go. There's some fancier, there are a number of more expensive restaurants in town. There's one that's a more Italian, just all sorts of places. They're great breakfast places. One of my all-time favorites, we won't even begin to discuss Mexican restaurants because there are so many of them. So what you find in Mexican restaurants in Flagstaff are Sonoran, which is southern Arizona, mixed with New Mexican, which are lots of green chilies. So that's kind of the mix of different restaurants. Some will emphasize one side and some will emphasize the other. There's one restaurant not close to campus, unfortunately, that's known for its enchilada sauce, but that's not close to campus. There are several places that Guy Fieri has been to in town. One person who has appeared, one of the chefs has appeared on Guy's Grocery Games now like 5 times.
Oh my goodness.
And won 3 of the 5 times. So all sorts of stuff out there. One thing that's kind of unusual that I haven't seen outside of this neck of the woods are chilaquiles. You guys know what that is?
I have not heard of this.
Okay, so chilaquiles are something that are made from tortilla chips. You take the old stale tortilla chips and you add a lot of egg and green chilies to them. And it is a truly amazing thing. If you really want to make it amazing, if you're not vegetarian, if they put the pork green chili sauce on top, it is truly to die for. There's a restaurant here in town that specializes in it. And it's not super, super duper close, but you can walk to it from here.
Amazing.
So yeah, on weekends you can't get in the door, but on a weekday you can. So since we're doing this Sunday through Thursday, you can actually get into those restaurants.
Amazing.
Well, I love reality TV and I'm a huge fan of the show Sister Wives. So I'm hoping I'll have time to do a little Flagstaff Sister Wives sightseeing for the conference. Becky, your face.
I don't know. I actually don't. I've heard about it, but I have never watched any of it, so I don't know anything about it. I can't help you on that.
Polygamous family, but they moved to Flagstaff.
And now they're not living here anymore.
They've kind of imploded. Some of them are still in Flag, but some of them have gone back to Utah. I'll give you some episode recommendations so you can enjoy. But I wonder, it seems like such a big thing. Like, what motivated you to want to host, and what has the logistical and organizational experience of this been like?
Well, I would have hosted many years ago, and because this is kind of in Arizona, this is kind of the place you want to be in the summertime. You don't want to be in southern Arizona. It's 120 degrees, right? Mm-hmm. So in 2019, they finished building the Kitt Recital Hall, which is an award-winning acoustical space. So that was the biggest reason we now had a really good space that we could use. And that was one of the reasons. And I was at the IDRS conference in Florida. By the way, my first IDRS conference was, I think it's 1976 or something. It was in Evansville, and Lila Storch was the big person who was there. My dad took me. Amazing. Anyway, getting back to why I did it. Martin happened to say in the IDRS general meeting that he was looking for people to host in, I think it was 2021. And I knew that this recital hall was in the works in 2018, and they were already starting to build it, so I knew it would be built. And he came up and he looked around, and at that point he said, this is the perfect place for this. By the way, the other thing, we have a million other coffee houses. I mean, you spit, there's a coffee house. We have a place. I think we had the first coffee house in the state of Arizona. It's called
cool.
Macy's. It's called Macy's. It's been around since the early 1970s, so yeah. And my husband will go there and buy their coffee because he's a coffee connoisseur. I don't drink coffee. But apparently they have this, if you get it on close to when they've ground it, it's amazing. Anyway, back to that. He was looking at places like that, what makes this a great place. We had all the spaces, and we could make it happen. And so he went back, and everybody said on the board, well, we're having 2020 in Colorado, and then we're going to Thailand. So maybe it's too soon. I guess it was 2022. They wanted me to do it. 2022. We don't want to do another mountain town, though. I don't really consider. Yes, it's a mountain town, but it's a lot different than Boulder. Mm-hmm. It's not the same kind of place at all. So then COVID came, and it was 2021, and they needed some place to hold 2023, and they didn't have any takers. And Martin came to me and asked if I would do it. So, and then he said, somebody else came and said, well, would you do 2024 instead? And we could maybe switch things around. And I said, well, I can't really do that because I'm retiring. So if you're going to do it here, it was 2024 he wanted me to take. So I said, yeah, it's got to be 2024. It can't be 2025 because I'm retiring in 2024. After that, you'd have to ask the new person. So hence this one is what ended up being the year that we're doing it. If all that makes sense. Grand finale. Yes. My grand finale. Yeah.
Would you share with us a favorite memory from a past performance?
Wow. There have been so many times. There are these moments that you have sometimes when you're playing where everything just hits and it's kind of magical. And those don't happen very often. But there are a number of them that I can think of. Most of them were in orchestras, playing different pieces. One time I was playing English horn in the Franck D minor, and the person who was conducting just moved in such a way that it made me play that those solos better than I'd ever played them before. That kind of moment happens. I've had many wonderful moments performing with my colleagues in the Wooded Quintet. We all get along real well, and those have been magical moments all along. And it can be any kind of music. I had fun in Thailand playing a piece by the composer here at the university, Bruce Ryprich. It was a piece for Oboe d'Amore, which he's now arranged for both oboe, English horn, and Oboe d'Amore, so it can be played by any of the instruments. A very soulful piece. It's hard to pick out one. There's so many.
Do you have any memories of either a funny thing that happened on stage or something embarrassing or musical mishaps to share?
Oh, I think my greatest musical mishap. Oh, there's no doubt about it. I was playing with Conspirato, and I gotten really sick. We were on tour. We were doing 21 concerts in 23 days from Ohio all the way to Montana and back. And we were playing at Gustavus Adolphus. And my sister happened to play in the quintet at that time. She's still a flutist. And we decided we needed a break from just always playing quintet, and we decided to do the Hinastero duo. So we were taking the Hinastero duo with us. And I got really sick, and we went in to play this thing. And, the Hinastero duo is many pages long. And I think the last movement, what is it, 6 or 8 pages you got to lay across, and you've got to walk across the stage to play it. I mean, today you can obviously use an iPad or something, but not in those days. So for some silly reason, she let me go out and put the music up. And we played the first page, and we got to the second page, and it was not the second page. It was the third page. And she caught it right away, and I didn't. And I was on so many drugs for this to keep from being a mess on stage that I started giggling.
Oh no.
So we had to stop and restart the movement. We were only a minute in, but the people, the folks at that university weren't real. They didn't take it with the amusing.
Oh, come on.
So that was that was super embarrassing moment.
It happened. Come on. Have a sense of humor.
That's amazing.
Oh, so we started again with the pages in the right order, but I got the giggles and I couldn't stop. It was really horrible. I was so tired and I was so sick. There was just no choice.
So we have reached the end, believe it or not.
Oh, right.
And our favorite last question to ask is, what is your advice for a young musician who aspires to have a career like yours?
Well, in addition to all the other things I've said, you've got to practice. It takes practice, and a lot of it. There are only a few so gifted that they can just walk in and play it. And if you want to make it on any instrument, you've got to live with your metronome. You got to tear things apart and put them back together again. I mean, some of my most frustrating moments have been with some really talented players who never practice with a metronome, and you're playing something like the Carter Quintet, and where things are so and they get off a 16th all the time. You can't be off a 16th because, I have the next 16th and the horn player had the 16th before them. And if you don't put your 16th in the right place. Anyway, practicing, being diligent about practicing with your metronome, making sure everything always lines up. Of course, then you can be musical with it, but when the time is right, not randomly.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be ready to spend your life making reeds and understand that you're not always going to have a big social life. That's just a reality. You take time when you can. But, when I was in school, I remember we'd all go practice until 9:00 and then we'd go see a movie. That kind of thing. So for me, the practicing is the most important thing. I'm not sure that's true for everybody, but it is for me. And then diversify, as I mentioned earlier, and be open to suggestions as much as you can stand it, and willing to listen to people who know a lot about music and can give good musical advice, whether it's on the oboe or it's someone coaching you on another instrument.
Becky, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. This has been such a joy, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Okay, we hope you enjoyed that episode, that interview, and that you're having a wonderful summer, that it is epic in the good way, not epic in the Homerian way.
Yeah.
And we hope you're
Hopefully you're not
desiccating or defecating. A social media rate and review, you all know the deal. Galit, we have a special treat for the next time that we meet. I don't know. Who's the next episode guest? I'm being weird.
We are so happy to present an interview with bassoonist Per Hannevold, who really needs no further introduction. This was a really great conversation, and you'll have to wait until the next episode to hear it. So
that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Count down the days.
All right, let's end this nerd parade.
And go make reads.